Operation Iraqi Freedom launched on March 20, 2003. In 21 days, coalition forces drove from Kuwait to Baghdad and toppled Saddam Hussein's government. This is every major weapon system that shaped Operation Iraqi Freedom and what it could and couldn't do. Coalition ground forces, M1 and M1 Abrams main battle tank. The Abrams was the undisputed king of the Iraqi desert. The M1 fired 120mm sabot and heat rounds with devastating accuracy. Its thermal sights worked day and night, through dust and smoke. At the Battle of Baghdad, Abrams crews engaged Iraqi armor that ranges beyond 2,000 meters, far outside anything Iraq could return effective fire. The M1 variant added improved command systems. Iraqi armor simply had no answer for it. Not a single Abrams was destroyed by enemy fire during the initial invasion. The tank that rolled into Baghdad did so almost unopposed in tank-on-tank terms. M2A3 Bradley infantry fighting vehicle. The Bradley carried a 25mm Bushmaster chain gun and Tau anti-tank missiles alongside 7 infantrymen. During the Thunder run into Baghdad, 2 armored columns that drove straight through the city. Bradleys absorbed RPG hits, returned fire with their cannons, and kept moving. The combination of Abrams and Bradleys operating together proved lethal. Bradleys suppressed infantry, while Abrams handled hardened targets. It's a pairing that the Iraqi army, equipped with older Soviet-era vehicles and no combined arms doctrine worth mentioning, could not match. M109A6 Paladin self-propelled howitzer. The Paladin is a 155mm self-propelled artillery system that can fire and move within 60 seconds. Shoot and scoot. In military terms, it delivered precision and volume of fire across the advance from Kuwait. The Paladin's computerized fire control allowed rapid mission execution without manual survey. During the march to Baghdad, Paladins provided rolling artillery support to advancing armored columns. The US fielded hundreds of Paladins in theater. Iraq had older towed artillery with no comparable accuracy, no precision munitions, and crews that were outranged before they could respond. M270 MLRS multiple launch rocket system. The MLRS fires 12 227mm rockets in under a minute, saturating an area the size of several football fields. Crews called it Steel Rain. During OIF, MLRS units fired both unguided rockets for area suppression and precision ATACMS missiles against high-value targets. The system's range, over 70 kilometers with ATACMS, allowed strikes deep behind Iraqi lines without risking aircraft-to-air defenses. Iraq had its own BM-21 and Astros II rocket artillery, but nothing with comparable range, precision, or fire rate. Coalition MLRS batteries effectively neutralized Iraqi artillery before it could threaten advancing columns. M198 and M777 155mm howitzers towed artillery remained essential throughout OIF. The M198 was the workhorse of Marine artillery units, providing direct support to infantry advancing to southern Iraq, firing Copperhead laser-guided rounds and Excalibur GPS-guided shells. Towed artillery could place rounds within meters of a target at 30 kilometers range. The lighter M777, already entering service, would prove even more valuable in the insurgency years that followed. Marine artillery units at Nasiriyah and during the push to Baghdad depended on these systems for fire support when air assets weren't available. Stryker infantry carrier vehicle. The Stryker was relatively new to combat in 2003. An 8-wheeled armored vehicle carrying 9 infantrymen, it filled the gap between heavy armor and light infantry. Stryker brigades offered speed and strategic mobility. They could deploy faster than armored divisions, while providing better protection than unarmored vehicles. During OIF and the subsequent counterinsurgency, Strykers proved adaptable, mounting different weapon packages including 105mm guns, anti-tank missiles, and mortar carriers. They weren't Abrams, but they could patrol, react, and fight across Iraq's varied terrain. The Humvee was everywhere. Designed as a light utility vehicle, it carried troops, mounted machine guns, hauled supplies, and served as command vehicles and ambulances. Early in OIF, Humvees were largely unarmored, a decision that proved catastrophic once the insurgency began. The ambush at Nasiriyah, where a supply convoy including Jessica Lynch's unit was hit, involved unarmored Humvees. The military scrambled to add armor kits. Hillbilly armor, improvised steel plates welded on by troops, became infamous. Eventually purpose-built armored Humvees and MRAPs replaced them, but not before hundreds of soldiers died in vehicles not designed for the fight they were in. M1114 up-armored HMMWV. The armored variant of the Humvee featured hardened steel, ballistic glass, and reinforced doors. It was insufficient against large IEDs, but provided meaningful protection against small arms and RPGs. The scramble to produce and field M1114s became one of the defining logistics stories of the Iraq War. Demand vastly outpaced production. Congressional hearings, Pentagon investigations, and public outrage followed reports of troops deploying without adequate vehicle protection. The M1114 was never a solution. It was a stopgap until MRAPs arrived. MATV and RG-31 MRAP, mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, were built with V-shaped hulls to deflect blast energy away from occupants. The RG-31, a South African design, and later the MATV, became standard patrol vehicles as the insurgency intensified. MRAPs saved thousands of lives. Studies consistently showed MRAP occupants survived IED strikes that would have killed Humvee crews. The vehicle program, rushed into production under urgent needs requests, cost billions and fundamentally changed how the military thinks about force protection versus mobility. Aviation, fixed-wing, F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter. OIS opened with F-117s. On the night of March 19th, 4 Nighthawks dropped precision-guided bombs on a compound where Saddam Hussein was believed to be meeting senior officials. The decapitation strike that preceded the official ground invasion. The F-117 used laser-guided GBU-27 bunker busters. It was the first combat use of the Nighthawk since Kosovo. Though the strike missed Saddam, it demonstrated the coalition's intent and willingness to use stealth assets for high-value targets from day one. F-15E Strike Eagle. The Strike Eagle flew deep strike missions throughout OIF, carrying JDAM GPS-guided bombs, laser-guided weapons, and anti-radiation missiles against air defense networks. F-15Es hit airfields, command bunkers, Republican Guard formations, and eventually time-sensitive targets supporting ground forces. Its range and payload, up to 24,000 pounds of ordnance, made it the coalition's primary deep strike aircraft. The Strike Eagle flew missions from bases in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Jordan, covering all of Iraq with precision firepower around the clock. F-16CJ Fighting Falcon. The F-16CJ was the dedicated suppression of enemy air defenses variant, carrying HARM missiles that home on radar emissions. When Iraqi air defense radars activated, F-16CJs fired HARMs to destroy them. Iraq's integrated air defense system, once formidable, had been degraded by years of no-fly zone enforcement, and was systematically dismantled in the opening days. F-16s also flew close air support, dropping JDAMs on Republican Guard units south of Baghdad. With over 200 F-16 sorties per day at peak operations, they were the most numerous coalition strike aircraft in theater. B-52H Stratofortress. The B-52 dropped more bomb tonnage in OIF than any other aircraft. Flying from Diego Garcia and RAF Fairford, B-52s delivered CBU cluster munitions and JDAMs against Republican Guard divisions dead in and around Baghdad. A single B-52 can carry 70,000 pounds of bombs. Kharkiv bombing of Iraqi troop concentrations broke unit cohesion before ground forces arrived. At the Battle of An-Najaf, B-52 strikes on Republican Guard positions reportedly caused mass desertions. The psychological impact of B-52 strikes, audible from miles away, with no warning, was as important as the physical destruction. B-2 Spirit Stealth Bomber. B-2s flew some of the longest combat missions in history. From Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, over 30 hours round trip to Iraq and back. Each mission required 2 aerial refuelings each way. The B-2 carried 16 JDAM precision bombs per sortie and struck hardened targets that required stealth penetration of Iraqi air defenses. Despite the small fleet, only 20 operational aircraft, B-2s struck dozens of high-priority targets, including leadership bunkers and deeply buried command facilities. Flying from the continental U.S. to combat, demonstrating global strike reach. A-10 Thunderbolt II. The A-10 was built to kill tanks, and it did exactly that in Iraq. Its GAU-8 Avenger 30mm cannon fires depleted uranium rounds that penetrate armor. Against Iraqi Republican Guard armor formations, A-10s were devastatingly effective. They also flew close air support for ground troops, often working at low altitude and in marginal weather. During the ambush at Nasiriyah, A-10s provided critical fire support for Marines under pressure. The aircraft is ugly, slow, and loud, and irreplaceable in the close air support role. Multiple A-10s absorbed battle damage that would have downed faster jets and returned to base. AC-130 Spectre Gunship. The AC-130 Spectre circled targets at night, delivering 25mm cannon, 40mm Bofors, and 105mm howitzer fire with precision. It's a flying artillery platform, During the advance on Baghdad and throughout the subsequent counterinsurgency, AC-130s provided devastating support to Special Operations Forces. They could loiter for hours, track multiple targets simultaneously, and deliver fires within meters of friendly troops. The 105mm howitzer on the AC-130 is the same cannon used in towed artillery, but directed from the sky with a persistent sensor suite. Iraqi forces operating at night learned to fear the sound of C-130 engines overhead. EA-6B Prowler. The Prowler jammed Iraqi communications and radar systems, blinding air defenses and disrupting command networks. It accompanied strike packages into defended airspace, broadcasting noise across radar frequencies. The EA-6B carried 4 crew members, a pilot and 3 electronic warfare officers, each managing different jamming systems. Without the Prowler's protection, coalition strike aircraft would have faced far greater risk from surviving Iraqi air defenses. Electronic warfare was invisible but essential to coalition air dominance from day one. Aviation helicopters. AH-64D Apache Longbow. The Apache is the world's most capable attack helicopter. Its longbow radar can detect and classify 256 targets simultaneously and prioritize the 16 most threatening. Hellfire missiles, 70mm rockets, and a 30mm chain gun gave Apaches enormous firepower. However, OIF produced the Apache's most notorious moment. On March 24th, the 11th Attack Helicopter Regiment launched a deep attack on the Medina Division. Iraqi farmers turned on lights, alerting defenders. 30 Apaches flew into intense ground fire. 1 was shot down, the crew captured. Nearly every Apache returned with significant damage. The mission failed. It forced a fundamental reassessment of how attack helicopters operate. UH-60 Black Hawk. The Black Hawk was the primary troop transport and medevac helicopter throughout OIF. It inserted Special Operations Forces, evacuated casualties, resupplied forward units, and carried commanders across the battlefield. The helicopter's speed, reliability, and versatility made it indispensable. Medevac Black Hawks, marked with red crosses, flew into hostile fire to retrieve wounded soldiers. The Golden Hour Doctrine, getting a casualty to surgical care within an hour, saved lives that would have been lost in previous wars. Black Hawk crews flew around the clock throughout the campaign. CH-47D Chinook. The Chinook heavy-lift helicopter moved artillery pieces, vehicles, fuel bladders, and large numbers of troops. During the rapid advance north, logistics chains stretched thin. Chinooks bridged the gap, delivering ammunition and fuel forward faster than ground convoys could manage in contested territory. The helicopter's twin-rotor design allows it to carry loads that would ground a single-rotor aircraft. Special Operations Chinooks, with enhanced avionics and defensive systems, inserted teams deep into Iraq, ahead of conventional forces. Naval Forces Tomahawk Land Attack Missile, TLAM OIF, opened with a massive Tomahawk salvo. Surface ships and submarines in the Persian Gulf and Red Sea fired hundreds of Tomahawks at Iraqi leadership targets, air defense nodes, and command bunkers in the opening hours. The Tomahawk flies at subsonic speed using terrain-following guidance and GPS, striking within meters of its target at ranges over 1,000 miles. Iraq had no defense against cruise missiles. The opening barrage was intended to paralyze command and control before ground forces crossed the border. Tomahawks were fired continuously throughout the campaign against time-sensitive and hardened targets. USS Kitty Hawk, Roosevelt, Lincoln, and Constellation carrier strike groups. 4 carrier strike groups operated in the Persian Gulf and Eastern Mediterranean during OIF. Each carrier air wing flew 100-plus sorties per day. The carriers provided continuous strike capability independent of basing agreements, crucial when Turkey refused to allow U.S. ground forces to use its territory for a northern front. Naval aviation flew F-A-18 Hornets and Super Hornets, EA-6B Prowlers, and E-2C Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft. Without carrier aviation, coalition air power would have been significantly reduced. The famous Mission Accomplished banner appeared aboard USS Abraham Lincoln. BGM-109 Tomahawk from submarines. Los Angeles-class and improved Los Angeles-class attack submarines fired Tomahawks from the Persian Gulf and Red Sea. Submarines contributed a significant portion of the opening salvo's cruise missile count. Nuclear submarines can launch Tomahawks from vertical launch tubes without surfacing, appearing from nowhere, firing, and disappearing again. Their contribution to OIF demonstrated that submarine-launched cruise missiles are a primary strike weapon, not a backup capability. Precision Munitions JDAM, Joint Direct Attack Munition JDAM, is a tail kit that turns a dumb bomb into a GPS-guided precision weapon. Attach it to a Mark 82 500-pound bomb or Mark 84 2,000-pound bomb, and it steers to coordinates with 10-meter accuracy regardless of weather. JDAMs were the most used precision munition of OIF. Thousands were dropped. They cost roughly $25,000 each, cheap by precision munition standards. The combination of JDAM accuracy and B-52 or B-2 delivery capacity allowed coalition aircraft to strike dozens of targets per mission. JDAMs made every bomb a precision weapon. GBU-28 Bunker Buster. The GBU-28 is a 5,000-pound laser-guided bomb with a hardened penetrator warhead designed to punch through reinforced concrete before detonating. It was developed to destroy deeply buried Iraqi command bunkers. F-15Es and B-2s delivered GBU-28s against suspected leadership and command facilities throughout the campaign. The weapon can penetrate 100 feet of earth or 20 feet of concrete. Iraq built hardened bunkers after the Gulf War specifically to survive air attack. The GBU-28 made those bunkers irrelevant. AGM-88 HARM, high-speed anti-radiation missile. HARM missiles destroyed Iraqi radar systems throughout OIF. They home on radar emissions. If a radar turns on, the HARM finds it. Iraqi air defense crews faced an impossible choice: activate radar to engage aircraft and invite a HARM strike, or leave radar off and lose targeting data. Most chose to leave radar off. Coalition aircraft operated over Iraq with minimal radar-guided air defense threat within days. The systematic destruction of Iraqi integrated air defense was one of the most complete suppression campaigns in military history. Iraqi forces, T-72, main battle tank. The T-72 was Iraq's best tank. Soviet-designed, with a 125mm smoothbore gun and composite armor. It was a legitimate threat, in theory. In practice, Iraqi T-72s were export variants, with downgraded armor and fire control. Iraqi crews were poorly trained and used outdated Soviet doctrine. Against Abrams tanks with thermal sights and superior ammunition, Iraqi T-72s were destroyed at ranges they couldn't engage back. At the Battle of Medina Ridge in 1991, and again in 2003, T-72s were killed by the hundreds without matching kills on Abrams. Iraq fielded over 2,000 T-72s. Almost none survived the conventional phase. BMP-1 infantry fighting vehicle. The BMP-1 carried infantry and mounted a 73mm gun and anti-tank missile. Soviet-designed and widely exported, it was everywhere in the Iraqi army. Against Bradleys or Abrams, the BMP-1 was outranged and outgunned. Its thin armor was penetrated by 25mm rounds. Thousands were destroyed or abandoned. Burned-out BMPs littered the highways approaching Baghdad, testament to the one-sided nature of the conventional fight. RPG-7. The RPG-7 was the great equalizer of the insurgency. A rocket-propelled grenade launcher, firing shaped charge warheads. It cost almost nothing and required minimal training. RPG-7s were useless against Abrams frontally, but could damage tracks, optics, and exhaust systems. Against Humvees, they were lethal. Iraqi insurgents acquired millions of RPGs from looted arms depots after the conventional war ended. For the next decade, the RPG-7 was the defining weapon of the Iraq War, heard on every news broadcast, seen in every combat video, responsible for a significant fraction of coalition casualties. Strela and SA-7 man-portable air defense. Iraqi forces fielded Soviet-era shoulder-fired missiles, including the SA-7 Grail and SA-14. These infrared-guided missiles threatened helicopters and low-flying aircraft. Coalition aircraft used flares and terrain masking to defeat them. Several helicopters were damaged or downed by manpads during the campaign, including during the infamous Apache raid. Special Operations Forces conducted missions specifically to secure manpad stockpiles, the fear being that shoulder-fired missiles could end up shooting down civilian airliners if looted. Conclusion. Operation Iraqi Freedom demonstrated the most complete conventional military dominance in modern history. In 21 days, coalition forces covered 600 kilometers and toppled a government defended by the fourth largest army in the world. American weapons, particularly the Abrams-Bradley combination, precision air power, and Tomahawk cruise missiles, performed exactly as designed. Iraqi conventional forces were not defeated, they were erased.